Well, it's time to start talking about the cloud and the help desk. And to help me out with that, I've got Dakota Snow. Dakota, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Oh, doing great, doing great. We are folks, fellow Pacific Northwesterners in the United States. Dakota, where do you live? I live in the state of Washington. Where are you?
I'm located here in Oregon.
Well, tell us about yourself, because you do a lot of network support, and of course, you've had a lot of work with the help desk too.
Absolutely. So I'm currently the director of network operations for a local internet service provider. We deliver gigabit speed internet to rural Oregon.
Where were you 40 years ago? Is all I can
Yeah,
say, because I lived in, grew up in rural Oregon, and would have loved to have that. So.
absolutely. No, we get that all the time.
One of the things when it comes to the cloud, we live in a cloud first hybrid world. And what I mean by that, and Dakota, you have to tell me if I'm off base on this, is that we tend to go to the cloud for our solutions first, but we also live in a world where things are still installed. You know what I'm trying to say? They work together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, there, the cloud is an ever evolving place. And I think the pandemic really push the cloud forward a lot faster. It kind of jump started it, where a lot more people realized the usefulness of the cloud. Absolutely.
We talked about it for 10 years, 15 years, right? But we only saw like maybe 3 years before the pandemic hit, where the cloud was really truly being adopted in a practical way. And then, of course, the pandemic pushed a lot of smaller business, everybody into. The pandemic pushed everybody into the cloud. Fair enough.
Absolutely. No, the cloud can just do so many different things, and the speed of spinning up services is a huge advantage for some companies, but some things still have to be ran on-prem or run better on-prem for some certain
Sure,
organizations.
sure. And there are things that you have to kind of trade off. Let's talk about the different services that are around from the cloud, and then we'll get into something like virtual desktop infrastructure. But first, when it comes to the cloud, I always like that pizza as a service model to understand the different cloud models. Do you like that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who don't understand what the pizza as a service, or the that analogy, definitely go out and Google it. But if the difference is between on-prem and the cloud, where if you're running service on-prem, you have to source the dough, you have to source the toppings, the cheese, and all that information. As is, what we're saying is you have to get the server, the network, and all that. Where if you go out to like a pizza shop, you're getting and get a slice of pizza. That pizza is already made for you when you get there, but you might not have as much customization in that actual slice of pizza as if you were to make it yourself.
And then there are different various levels of the cloud. And just for this discussion, you have your infrastructure as a service, you're all the way to software as a service. Software as a service is where it's all provided for you. Whereas with infrastructure as a service, it's like you have the server all set up and a lot of the applications and services set up for you, but then you have to kind of complete the pizza, as it were.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we saw with the pandemic was the need really for a more virtual desktop interface. Let's talk about the VDI scene for a second. What are the conveniences of that? What are some of the issues of that?
With the pandemic, it really highlighted the ability for cloud to spin up a service super fast, because it is already all assembled for you. You simply subscribe to the service and you can just implement it same day. Where if you were to do that on prem, you'd have to source all the hardware and set up the infrastructure to be able to do that. So that is definitely one advantage, is quick deployment of services such as virtual desktop. That is one really useful tool. But again, with the cloud service, depending on the place you subscribe to, you might not have as much customization or some of the exact tools you're looking for, just depending on which cloud provider you go with.
Makes sense. And what's great about virtual desktop infrastructure, whether it be something that's installed, where you install something on a server and then it spits out a virtual desktop to Dakota and one to me as well, is that you have consistency, right, Dakota?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
One of the things I find interesting about the cloud-based virtual desktop infrastructure is that it's also quite scalable. So let's talk about some of these ideas. First of all, when it comes to any cloud resource, I mentioned virtual desktop interface as an example, but with the cloud, you can get anything going. Servers, right? Security solutions, blockchain, the whole bit. But let's talk about the whole idea of the shared resources and how that's important. And also, there's this concept of elasticity, which I find interesting.
Yeah. So, there's different models of the cloud. You have dedicated cloud, you have shared resources, and the shared resources is probably one of the most common instances a lot of people see, just because it's a lot cheaper. You have a portion of that pizza. You have a portion of that pizza available to you where you can rapidly scale up if you need to, and that's where rapid elasticity comes in. Rapid elasticity comes in, where you can, say, an event like COVID, where all of a sudden your cloud resource is needing more resources to it. You can rapidly scale that instance up to give it more RAM, more compute power, and then when that demand goes away, you can shrink it back down.
See, that way you're improving costs. So that way you're not having a problem with performance because you're trying to save money, or the other way around where you have a problem with money because you're providing too much services when they're not really needed.
Absolutely. Why be spending all this money on massive computing power when it's just sitting there idle? But when you actually need it, you have the availability to be able to scale as the demand scales. And then maybe at nighttime or something, it shrinks back down or whatever. You can scale that back down to save you the costs and not have all that idle compute power you're paying for.
Dakota, thank you so much, man. It's been great talking to you about the advantages and disadvantages of the cloud, and also looking at it from a help desk perspective. Sure, appreciate it.
Absolutely. Not a problem. Thank you for having me.